Dr. Mira Han pressed her face against the cold metal of the observation window. Her breath made small fog circles on the glass as she stared at the most beautiful and dangerous creature in the known galaxy. The thing they called the astral falcon floated in the center of the containment chamber like a living piece of starlight. It was not really a falcon at all. No Earth bird had ever looked like this. The creature stretched 4 meters from wingtip to wingtip. Its body seemed to be made of living crystal that caught light and threw it back in colors that had no names. Blues that were deeper than ocean trenches, reds that burned brighter than dying suns, golds that shimmered like captured lightning. The falcon turned its head toward the window. Its eyes were like 2 small galaxies spinning in endless circles. When it looked at her, Mira felt something stir in her chest. Not fear exactly, more like recognition, as if she was looking at something she had been searching for her whole life without knowing it. Still watching our guest, I see. Mira turned to find Dr. Jun Kim walking into the observation room. He carried a thick stack of data tablets under his arm. His usually neat hair was messy from running his hands through it. Dark circles under his eyes showed he had been working too long without sleep. Someone has to, Mira said. The poor thing has been alone for 3 years. Jun set his tablets down on the metal table with a loud clang. Poor thing? Mira, that creature put 17 researchers in the medical bay. The Velkan Beastmaster lost 3 of his arms trying to touch it. The Nereid telepath is still in a coma. Mira knew all this. She had read every report, watched every video. The Astral Falcon had appeared near the Vega system 3 years ago. It had followed human ships but never attacked them. When word spread through the Galactic Consortium, every major species had sent their best experts to make contact. The results were always the same. Anyone who tried to touch the Falcon was thrown back with tremendous force. Not hurt exactly, but definitely not welcome. The creature seemed to have barriers around it that no technology could break through. Maybe they were trying too hard, Mira said quietly. What do you mean? Look at it, Jun. Mira pointed at the Falcon. The creature had begun to move in slow, graceful circles around the chamber. It's not angry. It's not scared. It's waiting. Waiting for what? I don't know, but not for someone to grab it or control it or study it like a lab specimen. Jun picked up one of his tablets and swiped through screens of data. The Velkan ambassador is getting impatient. He says his empire has wasted enough time on human methods. He wants to try neural bonding. Mira winced. Neural bonding was how the Velkans controlled their war beasts. It involved forcing a mental connection that gave the bonding partner complete control over the bonded creature. It was effective but brutal. And the Nereids? Scholar flowing between currents thinks we should flood the chamber with their meditation, gases. She believes the Falcon will enter a trance state that will make it more receptive to telepathic contact. What about what the Falcon wants? Jun looked at her with tired eyes. Mira, it's an animal. Is it? She turned back to the window. The Falcon had stopped its circling and was floating directly in front of the observation window. It tilted its crystalline head as if listening to their conversation. Look at its eyes, Jun. Really look. Jun moved to stand beside her. For a moment, they both stared at the creature in silence. The Falcon's galaxy eyes seemed to look right through the window and into their souls. Okay, Jun said slowly. I'll admit there's something unusual about its behavior patterns, but that doesn't mean it's intelligent in any way we can understand. Maybe intelligence isn't the right word, Mira said. But there's something there, something aware. The door to the observation room hissed open. Commander Yuki Sato walked in wearing her crisp military uniform. Her boots clicked against the metal floor as she approached the window. Behind her came 2 figures that made Mira's stomach tighten. Ambassador Thexmore of the Velkan Empire was nearly 3 meters tall and covered in dark scales. His forearms ended in hands that could crush steel. His yellow eyes held no warmth as they fixed on the Falcon. Beside him floated Scholar flowing between currents in her mobility tank. The Nereid looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a wise old woman. Her translucent body pulsed with soft blue light as she moved through the water that kept her alive outside of her home oceans. Dr. Han, Commander Sato said. The ambassador and scholar have some questions about your research methods. Thexmore's voice was like gravel being ground between stone wheels. Human, your species has had 3 months to establish contact with this creature. You have failed. It is time for more advanced methods. With respect, Ambassador, Mira said. Maybe failure is the wrong word. Maybe we just haven't found the right approach yet. The Nereid's voice came through a translator that made her words sound like singing. Dr. Han, your emotional attachment to this creature is clouding your scientific judgment. The consortium needs results, not sentiment. What if sentiment is exactly what we need? Mira asked. All 4 of her companions stared at her. In the chamber, beyond the window, the astral falcon had begun to glow more brightly. Its crystalline feathers caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. Explain, Commander Sato said. Mira took a deep breath. Every species that has tried to contact the falcon has approached it as something to be controlled, or studied, or used. What if that's exactly wrong? What if it's looking for something else entirely? Such as? Thexmore asked. His tone suggested he thought human ideas were worth very little. Partnership, friendship, maybe even just kindness. The Velkan ambassador made a sound that might have been laughter if laughter could cut glass. Ridiculous. Creatures respond to strength and dominance. That is the way of nature. Maybe for your species, Mira said quietly. But humans have been making friends with animals for thousands of years. We don't always try to control them first. Scholar flowing between currents pulsed a deeper blue. Dr. Han, you are proposing to risk first contact with an unknown cosmic entity based on primitive emotional bonding techniques. I'm proposing we try treating it like a friend instead of a problem to be solved. The room fell silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Through the window, the astral falcon continued its slow dance through the chamber. Its movements were hypnotic and peaceful. Commander Sato looked from Mira to the alien delegates and back again. Dr. Han, if you're wrong about this, the consequences could be severe. If we're wrong about the current approach, Mira said, we'll spend the next 3 years exactly where we are now. Nowhere. She pressed her hand against the window. On the other side, the falcon drifted closer. For just a moment, it seemed to press its crystalline head against the barrier where her hand rested. Commander, Mira said softly, I'd like permission to enter the chamber. The silence that followed was so complete that Mira could hear her own heartbeat. 24 hours had passed since Mira asked for permission to enter the chamber. 24 hours of arguments, meetings, and heated discussions that echoed through the corridors of Station Kepler 9. Ambassador Thexmore had called the idea foolish and dangerous. Scholar flowing between currents had warned that human emotions would contaminate any scientific data. 3 other alien species had sent urgent messages demanding that their protocols be followed instead. But Commander Sato had made her decision. Dr. Han, she said as they stood outside the airlock leading to the containment chamber, I want to be very clear about this. We have no idea what will happen when you go in there. The medical team is standing by. Dr. Kim will monitor your vital signs from the observation room. At the first sign of trouble, we're pulling you out. Mira nodded as she pulled on the lightweight containment suit. It would protect her from radiation and provide emergency life support. But it wouldn't stop the kind of force that had thrown 17 other researchers across rooms. I understand, Commander. Do you? Sato's dark eyes were serious. Because once that door opens, you'll be alone with something that has more power than we can measure. Something that has hurt every person who tried to touch it. They weren't trying to touch it, Mira said softly. They were trying to capture it, control it, or force it to do what they wanted. That's different. Through the thick window of the airlock, she could see the astral falcon floating in the center of the chamber. It seemed calmer today. Its crystalline feathers shifted through gentle blues and greens instead of the sharp reds and golds it had shown during previous contact attempts. Dr. Kim's voice crackled through the comm system from the observation room. Mira, your heart rate is elevated but stable. Brain activity is normal. Remember, if you feel any strange sensations or mental pressure, get out immediately. Got it, June. Behind the thick glass of the observation window, she could see the assembled crowd watching her. Dr. Kim sat at a bank of monitoring equipment. Commander Sato stood with her arms crossed. Ambassador Thexmore loomed over everyone else, his arms folded in obvious disapproval. Scholar flowing between currents floated in her tank, pulsing with nervous blue light. 3 other alien observers had arrived during the night. A tall, thin Karathi with silver skin and no visible eyes. A small, furry Bixel, who communicated through color changes in his coat. A representative from the machine intelligence called the Collective, its mechanical body humming quietly in the corner. All of them had tried to contact the Falcon using their own methods. All of them had failed. Beginning entry sequence, Commander, Sato announced over the ship's communication system. The airlock cycled with a series of mechanical clicks and hisses. Mira felt her ears pop as the pressure equalized. Then the inner door slid open with a soft whisper. The containment chamber was larger than it looked from outside, 15 meters across and 20 meters high, with smooth white walls that curved into a dome overhead. The air tasted clean and slightly metallic from the filtration systems, and there, floating 3 meters away, was the most beautiful creature Mira had ever seen. This close, she could see details that hadn't been visible through the observation window. The Falcon's crystalline feathers weren't solid at all. They were made of some kind of energy that held the shape of crystal. Light moved through them like water through clear tubes, creating patterns that shifted and changed every few seconds. Its wings were spread wide, each feather catching and bending light into impossible colors. Its body was sleek and elegant, more like a work of art than a living thing. But its eyes were what took Mira's breath away. They weren't just like small galaxies. They were galaxies. She could see stars being born and dying in those spinning depths. She could see planets forming and solar systems dancing in slow eternal circles. The Falcon turned its head to look at her directly. For a moment, neither of them moved. Mira, Dr. Kim's voice came through her suit's speakers. The creature is showing increased energy output. Its biofield is expanding. She could feel it. A gentle pressure against her mind, like someone knocking softly on a door. Not trying to force their way in. Just asking permission to enter. "It's okay, June," she said quietly. "I think it's just curious." Ambassador Thexmore's harsh voice cut through the calm. "Human, do not let that thing into your mind. Unknown alien telepathy could cause permanent damage. It's not forcing anything," Mira said. She took a small step forward. The Falcon remained perfectly still. "It's asking." "Asking what?" Commander Sato's voice was tense. "I think it wants to know if I'm a friend." Mira remembered her grandmother's old house in the mountains of Korea. She remembered the birds that would come to the feeders outside the kitchen window. Her grandmother had taught her to move slowly around wild animals, to let them make the first choice about whether to trust her. "Never grab," her grandmother had said in her soft, patient voice. "Never chase. Let them come to you when they're ready." Mira extended her hand slowly, palm up. It was the same gesture she had used to feed birds as a child, the same gesture her grandmother had taught her for approaching any frightened animal. "Easy," she whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The Falcon tilted its head. The light in its feathers shifted to warmer colors, soft golds and gentle oranges that reminded Mira of sunrise over calm water. "Dr. Han." Scholar flowing between currents translated voice carried a note of alarm. "The creature's energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases. You should maintain distance." But the Falcon was already moving. It drifted forward with movement so graceful they seemed like a dance. Its galaxy eyes never left Mira's face. "Mira," Dr. Kim said urgently, "your brain activity is spiking. Something is happening to your neural patterns." She could feel it, a warm presence at the edges of her thoughts. Not invasive or demanding, more like a gentle hand reaching out to shake hers. "It's okay," she said. "It feels like making a new friend." The Falcon came closer and closer. Its crystalline head was now only an arm's length away from her outstretched, and in the observation room every alien representative leaned forward to watch. Ambassador Thexmore's 4 hands were pressed against the window. Scholar flowing between currents had stopped pulsing and hung perfectly still in her tank. The Falcon extended one wing. The tip of its longest feather brushed against Mira's gloved fingers. The universe exploded into light. Mira's consciousness suddenly expanded beyond the walls of the chamber, beyond the station, beyond the star system itself. She could feel the gravitational pull of distant suns. She could sense the cosmic winds that blew between galaxies. She could hear the music that stars made as they spun through space. And through it all, she felt the Falcon's presence. Not controlling her expanded awareness, but sharing it, showing her wonders that no human had ever imagined. "Mira!" Dr. Kim's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Your vital signs are going crazy. We need to get you out of there." But Mira barely heard him. The Falcon had stepped delicately onto her outstretched arm. Its weight was no more than a feather, but the contact sent waves of cosmic awareness through her entire being. Through their connection, she finally understood what the Falcon had been searching for. Not a master or a controller or even a scientist. It had been looking for a friend, someone who would approach it with kindness instead of greed, someone who would offer partnership instead of demanding submission. "Hello," she whispered to the creature of living starlight perched on her arm. "I'm Mira. What's your name?" The answer came not in words, but in a harmony of frequencies that meant something like wind between stars who sings with light. In the observation room, Ambassador Thexmore stared in shock as the human woman began to glow with the same crystalline light as the Falcon. Dr. Kim frantically checked his instruments as readings climbed beyond anything his equipment could measure. "Impossible, Scholar," flowing between currents whispered through her translator. "Humans don't have the neural capacity for cosmic awareness." But there on the monitors they could all see Mira Han floating 3 centimeters off the chamber floor, her body surrounded by swirling patterns of light that matched the Falcon's energy perfectly. For the first time in 3 years, the astral Falcon was no longer alone. 3 days had passed since Mira first touched the astral Falcon. 3 days since her life had changed forever. She stood in her quarters aboard Station Kepler 9, looking out at the stars through the large viewing port. But now, when she looked at those distant suns, she could feel them. Each star had its own personality, its own song that resonated through space. Some burned bright and young, full of energy and hope. Others were old and wise, their light steady and calm. The Falcon, who had told her its name was something like wind whisper in human words, perched on a specially built stand near her bed. It no longer needed to be contained. The creature stayed close to Mira by choice, not because anyone forced it to. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Dr. Kim entered carrying another stack of data tablets. His eyes were wider than usual and his hair was even messier than before. He had been working around the clock trying to understand what had happened to his friend. "Mira, you need to see these readings," he said, setting the tablets down on her small table. "Your brain activity isn't just different, it's impossible." She turned away from the window with a smile. "Good morning to you too, June." "Sorry. Good morning. But seriously, look at this." He picked up one of the tablets and showed her a series of wavy lines. "This is your neural activity from yesterday. See these spikes? They're happening at frequencies that human brains can't produce. Maybe human brains are more flexible than we thought," Mira said gently. "That's not all." June swiped to another screen. "Your blood work shows changes at the cellular level. Your DNA hasn't changed, but the way your cells use energy is completely different. It's like your body is learning to run on starlight instead of food." Mira nodded. She had noticed that she didn't feel hungry very often anymore. Sleep was different, too. Instead of the heavy unconsciousness she used to need, she now entered a state that felt more like floating in warm water, while cosmic music played in her mind. "Are you worried?" she asked her friend. June sat down heavily in the room's only chair. "Honestly? Yes. What if this connection is changing you in ways we don't understand? What if it's dangerous? Before Mira could answer, her door chimed again. This time Commander Sato entered without waiting for permission. Her face was tense, with worry. Dr. Han, we have a problem. Actually, we have several problems. What's wrong? The Galactic Consortium is sending a full investigation fleet. 12 ships from 7 different species. They'll be here in 2 days. Mira felt Wind Whisper stir on his perch. Through their connection, she sensed the Falcon's unease. It had been hiding from something when it first found human space. Now that something was getting closer. There's more, Commander Sato continued. Ambassador Thexmore is demanding that you be transferred to a Vulcan research facility. He says humans are too primitive to handle first contact protocols safely. And scholar flowing between currents wants you moved to the Nereid home system for deep meditation studies, Dr. Kim added. 3 other species have filed similar claims. Mira moved to sit on her bed. Wind Whisper immediately hopped over to her shoulder, his crystalline feathers shifting to calm blue colors. The moment he touched her, she felt the cosmic awareness expand through her mind again, and that's when she sensed it. Something dark and hungry moving through the space between stars. Something that had been following Wind Whisper's trail for a very long time. Commander, she said quietly, I need to tell you something important. The Falcon wasn't just wandering. When it found us, it was running. Running from what? Through her connection with Wind Whisper, images flowed into Mira's mind. Vast shapes that moved through dark space like living shadows. Creatures that fed on the life force of entire worlds. Things so ancient and terrible that even the oldest civilizations in the galaxy had tried to forget they existed. The Devourers, she whispered. Commander Sato and Dr. Kim both stared at her. The what? June asked. That's what Wind Whisper calls them. They're old, older than any of the species in the consortium. They live in the empty spaces between galaxies and feed on life itself. Mira, Commander Sato said carefully, how do you know this? Wind Whisper showed me. They've been hunting him for years because he escaped from one of their feeding grounds, and now they're following his trail here. The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the station systems. Through the viewing port, the stars continued their eternal dance, unaware of the darkness that was coming. How long do we have? Commander Sato asked. Mira closed her eyes and let her consciousness expand outward. She could feel the edges of the solar system, sense the movements of planets and asteroids. And there, at the very limit of her awareness, she felt something that made her blood turn cold. They're already here, she said. At the edge of the system, moving slowly because they want to be sure of their prey. Dr. Kim looked between Mira and Commander Sato with growing panic. What do we do? Should we evacuate the station? Where would we go? Sato asked grimly. If these things can hunt across space, running won't help. The consortium fleet might be able to fight them, June suggested. Through her connection with Wind Whisper, Mira saw flashes of memory. Entire worlds drained of life. Fleets of ships that became empty hulks drifting through space. The Devourers were not something that could be fought with normal weapons. No, she said sadly. The consortium species don't understand what they're dealing with. They'll try to use force and technology. That won't work against creatures that exist partially outside normal space. Then what do we do? Commander Sato asked. Mira stood up and walked back to the viewing port. Wind Whisper rode on her shoulder, his presence a warm comfort in her mind. Together, they looked out at the stars that suddenly seemed much less safe than before. I don't know yet, she admitted. But Wind Whisper didn't choose me by accident. He was looking for something specific, something that the other species don't have. What? The ability to work with the universe instead of trying to control it. As if responding to her words, Wind Whisper began to glow more brightly. His crystalline feathers caught the starlight and threw it back in patterns that seemed almost like writing. Through their bond, Mira felt his hope mixing with her determination. They're you. Consortium fleet will be here soon, Commander Sato said. They'll want to take you and Wind Whisper away for study. They can try, Mira said quietly. But I think they're going to find that some things can't be taken. Some things can only be freely given. Outside the viewing port, the stars seemed to pulse with new meaning. And somewhere in the darkness between them, ancient hunger stirred and began to move faster toward the small human station that dared to harbor the prey it had been hunting for so long. But Mira was no longer the same person who had pressed her face against the observation window just 4 days ago. She was something new, something that the galaxy had never seen before, a human who had learned to listen to the music of the stars themselves. And the stars, it turned out, had quite a lot to say. 1 week after first contact, the sky around Station Kepler 9 filled with ships. The Galactic Consortium fleet had arrived as promised. 12 massive vessels representing 7 different species hung in space like mechanical mountains. The Vulcan Empire sent their largest war cruiser, its dark hull bristling with plasma cannons. The Nereids brought a bioship that looked like a giant jellyfish floating through the void. The ancient Karathi arrived in a vessel made of living crystal that sang as it moved. But none of them were prepared for what came next. Mira stood in the station's main observation deck, her hand resting on Wind Whisper's crystalline back. Through their bond, she could feel the approaching darkness like ice water in her veins. The Devourers had been patient, waiting and watching from the edge of the system. Now, they were ready to feed. "Contact on long-range sensors," announced Lieutenant Park at the sensor station. His voice cracked with fear. Multiple bogies approaching from the outer system. Size and configuration unknown. Commander Sato stood beside the main display screen, her face pale but determined. "Put it on the main viewer." The screen flickered to life, showing the starfield beyond the station. At first, there was nothing unusual, just the familiar pattern of distant suns against the black of space. Then the stars began to disappear. One by one, points of light winked out as something vast and dark passed in front of them. But these weren't ships blocking the starlight. These were creatures so large that they cast shadows across light years of space. "Dear God," whispered Dr. Kim from his position at the science station. "How big are those things?" Through her connection with Wind Whisper, Mira felt the answer flow into her mind. The Devourers weren't really solid in the way that normal matter was solid. They existed partially in regular space and partially in the dark dimensions between realities. What they were seeing was just the smallest part of creatures that stretched across multiple levels of existence. "They're not ships," she said quietly. "They're alive, and they're hungry." The Consortium fleet reacted exactly as Wind Whisper had shown her they would. The Vulcan cruiser opened fire first, sending streams of superheated plasma toward the approaching shadows. The beams of energy were bright enough to light up half the solar system. They passed through the Devourers without effect. The Nereid bioship released clouds of engineered bacteria designed to break down organic matter at the molecular level. The Karathi crystal vessel fired beams of crystallized sound that could shatter asteroids. Nothing worked. "All ships, this is Admiral Grexthak of the Vulcan fleet." A harsh voice crackled over the communication system. "Form defensive pattern Alpha. Prepare for full bombardment." "Admiral, wait," Commander Sato broke in. "Our scans show those weapons aren't effective. We need a different approach." "Silence, human. Your species knows nothing of void combat. We will handle this threat." But even as the Admiral spoke, the first Devourer reached the outer edge of the Consortium fleet. The creature moved through space like oil flowing through water, its form shifting and changing as it approached the Karathi crystal ship. The contact lasted only seconds. The crystal vessel, which had survived battles across 3 galactic wars, simply went dark, its beautiful song cut off mid-note. Its crew of 200 vanished without even time to scream. "Karathi vessel Harmony of Ages, please respond." Admiral Grexthak's voice had lost its arrogant confidence. "Harmony of Ages, do you copy?" There was no response. The crystal ship drifted empty and lifeless, all its inner light gone forever. "They don't destroy," Mira said, her voice carrying across the station's communication system. "They drain. They feed on life force itself." 2 more Devourers had reached the fleet now. A Vulcan destroyer tried to ram one of them, hoping to cause damage through impact. The ship passed through the creature like a stone through smoke, then emerged on the other side as a dead hulk full of empty uniforms. This is impossible. Scholar flowing between currents transmitted from her bioship. Our sensors show no coherent matter structure to target. How do we fight something that isn't entirely real? In the observation deck, Mira felt Wind Whisper's distress through their bond. The Falcon had watched worlds die this way, had seen entire civilizations reduced to empty cities in a matter of hours. It perched on her shoulder, trembling with memories of ancient horror. "You don't fight them," she said softly. "Fighting is what they expect. It's what they're designed to counter." "Then, what do we do?" Commander Sato asked. Before Mira could answer, the largest devourer reached Station Kepler 9 itself. The creature was so vast that it blocked out half the star field, its dark form rippling with energies that hurt to look at directly. Tendrils of shadow reached out toward the station like the fingers of a giant hand. Every person on the station felt it then, a terrible cold that went deeper than their bones, a hunger that wanted to swallow their souls. Several crew members collapsed as the life force began to drain from their bodies, but Mira stood firm. Wind Whisper glowed brighter on her shoulder, and through their bond, she reached out with her consciousness, not to fight the devourer but to touch the space around it. The universe, she had learned, was much more flexible than most people believed. Matter and energy were just different expressions of the same fundamental forces, and those forces would listen to someone who approached them with respect instead of demands. She reached out and gently took hold of the gravitational field around the station. With Wind Whisper's cosmic awareness guiding her, she began to bend space itself, creating a protective bubble around Station Kepler 9. The devourer's hunger tendrils struck the barrier and recoiled as if they had touched something hot. For the first time in eons, one of the ancient feeders had encountered something it couldn't consume. "Impossible," Admiral Grexthak's voice whispered over the comm. "The human female is manipulating space-time directly. No species has that ability." "Maybe. No species tried the right approach," Mira replied, sweat beading on her forehead from the effort of holding the barrier. "Maybe you all tried to conquer the universe instead of asking it for help." The devourer pressed closer, its vast form writhing with frustrated hunger. Other creatures of its kind began to converge on the station, drawn by the unusual resistance they were encountering. "Mira," Dr. Kim said urgently, "there are 7 more of them coming. Can you protect us from all of them?" Through her bond with Wind Whisper, she felt the Falcon's faith in her mixing with her own determination. Together they reached deeper into the cosmic forces that surrounded them. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I'm going to try something that no one has ever attempted before." "What's that?" Mira smiled, even as she felt the weight of 7 ancient horrors pressing against her protective barrier. "I'm going to try to make friends with them." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of space itself groaning under the pressure of forces that had never been meant to touch. 7 devourers pressed against Mira's protective barrier around Station Kepler 9. Each creature was large enough to swallow moons, ancient enough to remember when the galaxy was young. They had consumed countless civilizations across millions of years. Nothing had ever stood against their hunger. Until now. Mira floated 3 feet above the observation deck floor, her body glowing with the same crystalline light as Wind Whisper. The Falcon had become part of her in a way that went beyond physical connection. Together they held back forces that could drain the life from entire star systems. "Energy output increasing," Dr. Kim reported from his instruments. His voice was tight with worry. "Mira, you're pushing beyond what human physiology can handle." But Mira barely heard him. Her consciousness had expanded to fill the space around the station. She could feel every atom of metal in the hull, every heartbeat of every person aboard. She could sense the cosmic winds that blew between stars and the quantum foundations that held reality together. Most importantly, she could feel the devourers themselves. They were not evil, she realized. They were just hungry. So hungry that they had forgotten there were other ways to exist. For eons, they had wandered the dark spaces between galaxies, feeding on whatever life they could find. It was all they knew. Admiral Grexthak to all ships. The Velkin commander's voice crackled over the communication system. The human's barrier is holding but weakening. Prepare to retreat to minimum safe distance. Wait, Mira called out, her voice carrying across all frequencies. Don't run. I need you to trust me. Human, you cannot reason with cosmic horrors. Admiral Grexthak replied. These creatures have destroyed entire sectors. They do not negotiate. Because no one ever tried to communicate with them properly, Mira said. She reached out through her connection with Wind Whisper, extending her awareness toward the largest devourer. They're not monsters. They're lost. The moment her consciousness touched the ancient creature, images flooded her mind. She saw the birth of the universe from the devourer's perspective, watched galaxies form and stars ignite, witnessed the first sparks of life appearing on countless worlds. And she saw the tragedy that had created the devourers. Long ago, before any of the current galactic civilizations existed, there had been another species. They had achieved perfect harmony with cosmic forces, becoming beings of pure energy who could exist anywhere in the universe. But something had gone wrong. A cosmic accident had trapped them between dimensions, cutting them off from normal sources of energy. Slowly, over millions of years, they had forgotten what they used to be. Forgotten everything except hunger. They became the devourers, feeding on life force because it was the only energy they could still absorb. You were like me once, Mira whispered, tears streaming down her face. You were partners with the universe, not predators. The largest devourer paused in its assault on her. Barrier. For the first time in eons, something had spoken to it with understanding instead of fear. Through her bond with Wind Whisper, Mira reached deeper into the cosmic forces around them. She touched the solar winds flowing from the system's star. She felt the gravitational songs of distant planets. She sensed the background radiation that filled all of space. There's so much energy all around us, she said, her voice carrying to every ship in the fleet. Stars burning, planets spinning, the universe itself expanding and creating new power every second. You don't need to feed on life. You just forgot how to feed on everything else. The devourers had stopped their attack completely now. All 7 ancient creatures hung motionless in space, their dark forms rippling with confusion and something that might have been hope. Show them, Wind Whisper's voice sang in her mind, though the words came out as harmonics of pure meaning rather than sound. Mira nodded and reached out to touch the quantum foam that existed at the foundation of reality itself. With gentle pressure, she began to weave new connections between the devourers and the cosmic energy that surrounded them. It was like teaching someone to breathe again after they had forgotten how lungs worked. The first devourer to accept her gift began to change. Immediately, its dark, hungry form started to glow with soft starlight. The creature's size remained the same, but its presence became warm instead of cold, creative instead of destructive. One by one, the other devourers made the same choice. They allowed Mira to reconnect them to the universe's endless supply of energy. They remembered what they had been before hunger consumed their identity. The transformation was beautiful beyond words. 7 cosmic horrors became 7 cosmic gardeners, their forms now glowing with the light of newborn stars. Instead of draining life from the worlds below, they began to sing harmonies that would help plants grow and encourage new forms of life to evolve. Impossible. Scholar flowing between currents whispered over the communication channel. The humans have transformed the devourers into something beneficial. How? Admiral Grexthak demanded. What technology could accomplish such a thing? Not technology, Mira replied, slowly lowering herself back down to the observation deck floor. Wind Whisper settled gently on her shoulder, his crystalline feathers now pulsing with satisfied contentment. Friendship, understanding, the willingness to listen before trying to control. Commander Sato stood beside her, staring out at the 7 beings of light that now danced gracefully around the station. Mira, what you just did will change everything. The entire galaxy will want to understand how humans accomplished this. We didn't accomplish anything alone, Mira said, reaching up to stroke Wind Whisper's crystal feathers. We had help from a friend who taught us that the universe responds better to partnership than to domination. Dr. Kim looked up from his instruments with wonder in his eyes. The energy readings are incredible. The transformed devourers are actually feeding cosmic energy back into space. They're making the star system more alive, not less. 6 months later, the first human Falcon partnerships had spread throughout human space. Each bonding was unique, but all shared the same fundamental approach. Work with the universe instead of against it. Ask instead of demand. Listen instead of command. The other species of the Galactic Consortium watched these developments with a mixture of awe and concern. If humans could transform cosmic destroyers into cosmic creators with nothing but empathy and understanding, what would they become when they truly mastered their abilities? But on Station Kepler 9, Mira Han simply stood at her observation window, each morning, watching the 7 beings of light dance among the stars. Wind Whisper perched on her shoulder, sharing the music that flowed between worlds. "What happens now?" she had asked him on that first morning after the transformation. His answer came as a harmony of frequencies that meant something like, "Now we teach others to listen to the songs that stars have always been singing." And across the galaxy, those who were wise enough to listen began to hear a new kind of music, the sound of partnership between intelligence and cosmos, the melody of friendship that could reshape reality itself. The sky had bent to her will not because she forced it to, but because she had asked it nicely and offered to dance with the forces that held everything together. It turned out the universe had been waiting a very long time for someone to ask.